Okay, so what we're talking about today, this one will be, everybody hear me okay? Yes?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Um, what I'm going to do a little different today is just take one session primarily where all they focused on was this one topic. And they went through it nice and iteratively, kind of step by step of how the creation happened and how it fits into the kind of scheme of things. Um, and so this is not going to be a really long one. It should easily fit into just under an hour. So I encourage you to ask questions as we go along, like we always do, because that's where the real fun part is, to have that interaction and to kind of go off on a tangent if we need to kind of explain something. So please feel free to ask the questions, and we'll just stop after each slide um, and ask if there are questions. And if they're not, we'll move on, and then we'll just see how it goes. All right. So how it all began, creation, evolution from the law of one. Okay, so this is all from section 13. So it's right at the beginning. And the question is Don. And so Don's kind of says, thanks. Can you tell me of the earliest first known thing in the creation? The interesting way he phrases that, the first known thing in the creation. And Ra says, the first known thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. And if you keep in mind some of the things you've been learning from Rupert and from Eckhart about our nature, about the oneness of consciousness, that shows up quite a bit as we go through this. So one of the things that this section does is not only explain kind of how our reality came into existence as best they can, but also what is unity consciousness, what is oneness, and it sort of gives us a few insights into that. So the infinity is the creation. Don asks, from this infinity then must have come what we experience as creation. What was the next step or the next evolvement? Infinity became aware. This was the next step. So this is how we all began. Infinity, or the one consciousness, became self-aware. Okay, interesting, isn't it? So that's the first attribute in existence, awareness. So that's the most fundamental attribute or quality, if you like, of existence, is sentience or consciousness, awareness. And Don says, well, then what happened? And Ras says, awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. So interesting that creation created a focus into an energy that was a power, if you like, a force, a movement. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos or love. So intelligent infinity created intelligent energy that we call love. So infinite energy is known to us, so experienced by us as the experience of love. He goes on, the creation is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle. So it focuses itself, infinity, as an aware and conscious principle called by us as closely as we can create understanding, learning a new language, intelligent infinity. So infinity is everything that is. It became aware, and then in focusing that awareness, it became intelligent. It started to have conscious, cognizance of some kind, awareness, intelligence. So and then he goes, can you state the next step? The next step is still at this space time. In other words, this is still going on. The next step is still this space-time nexus in your illusion achieving its progression, as you may see it in your illusion. It's interesting, he refers to our experience in this creation in third density by the term illusion. And it's important to understand that illusion doesn't mean it's not real, right? All illusions are real, and Rupert talks about that. So just the reality of the illusion is not what we think it is. For example, a mirage is real. There's something really there. What we think's there is a puddle of water or a pond or a lake, but that's not what's there. Is energy coming up or heat rising up that creates an illusion of a lake or water in a desert. And so that's where we get the term mirage or illusion from. So it doesn't mean that it's not real. It's just our interpretation of what we experience through our senses is not what it actually is. So our experience or our world is an illusion. It's real, but it's not what we think it is. It's probably the best way to understand that. We think it's this experience in space and time where we have matter, right? The three dimensions of matter and the fourth dimension of time, and we interpret that through our finite mind and body as a reality we're in. Whereas from Ra's point of view, he's saying, well, no, this is the illusion that you have, purposefully created for you to have the experience. And Ra will go into that in more detail as we get along further in the creation of how that happened. But this is very powerful kind of concept of what it is that we are involved in the existence of our being, of who we are and what we are. So again, the next step is still in the space-time nexus in your illusion, achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle following the law of one. An infinite reaction to the creative principle is what the next step is what we're currently involved in that, following the law of one. In one of its primal distortions, free will. So what's he saying? It's an infinite reaction to the principle of free will, right? That's what he's saying there. An infinite reaction to the principle, the creative principle of free will. Thus, many dimensions, many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity to the outpouring of randomized creative forces, this then creating patterns which in holographic style appear as the entire creation, no matter which direction or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin then to regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. A lot in there. Just ponder that for a minute, and if you have questions, let's see if we can field some of them now. No questions? So it's interesting. We are an infinite reaction to the principle, creative principle of free will. This sends out energy that becomes regularized into many dimensions, infinite in number. It moves the intelligent infinity due to the outpouring of randomized creative forces. So there's an outpouring flow out. So this is the movement of energy. So intelligent energy is in motion, always in motion. In fact, they have found that intelligent energy, or the energy, tends to spiral in a clockwise direction if you're looking directly at it, which is interesting. There's a number of Russian experiments that have indicated that clockwise is not just some random choice. There's some um, intelligence behind that. And so intelligent energy tends to have a spiraling flow that tends to be in a clockwise kind of direction. So the energy moves from the intelligent infinity to the outpouring randomized in the creative pattern, which in holographic style appear as the entire creation. So there's another place where Ra is talking about our illusion is kind of a holographic appearance of that energy. What's really there is energy moving. What we see is matter, planets, suns, people, trees, animals, whatever. Well, that's what we see. But what's really there is moving, swirling, intelligent matter, intelligent energy. We perceive it as matter. So very deep kind of concepts there on what is the basis of our reality. Okay, it's and that our reality is, in a sense, an illusion, like a holographic style illusion or appearance.
All right, I've got a couple of questions.
Okay, it's great.
One from Lou.
Go ahead, Luke.
Thanks, Scott. Yes, the next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle of the law of one. Who is reacting? It seems like here something has happened. There has been a division, and is this the unity that is reacting, or the divisions of this whole focusing? The who is reacting, single or as a group?
Yeah, it's there's only one. Infinity is reacting. If you look at it like this, say infinity was like a great mist that was just completely still and just hanging there. It became aware. How that happened does not say and probably doesn't know, but it became aware, so it became intelligent then, and then it created or an energy we know as love. And what love is an attractive force. In the mystery schools, they talk about um, uh, this from this using a metaphor like this. They say that the infinity created a hole like a donut hole within itself. It drew itself from a piece of itself, and in doing that, it created this amazing force that was love, because what was absent, where there was absence of it, it craved it to come back, and that created a sense of longing, of wanting to belong again to it. So if you can imagine like this giant infinite mist that creates a gap in the middle or a hole in the middle just to withdraw itself to see what happened, and in that it created a sense of wanting to belong within itself, of identifying that it lacked something, it wanted to connect back, which create in their metaphor the force of love, of longing. So there's love, and later on Ra goes on, there's love and light tends to um, shoot in direct linear fashions, but it spirals as it shoots. So instead of just it going straight like a bullet, although bullets do this too, the bullet spins while it goes straight, and that's what light tends to do. It goes towards, it's attracted by love. So every attractive force, magnetic, gravitational, is a manifestation, in one sense, of love. That's what he's saying. So what reacted was, it reacted to itself from being still like mist. Then there's a breeze or something that creates motion in the mist, and you start seeing movement in the mist. Would be maybe one way to envision that. It self reacted to. Now it's in motion rather than in stillness, just abiding in stillness. That force, or what was created, was a movement which caused, like we can say, the mist to be then shapes, movements started to appear. So there's only one thing, and that one thing is infinite energy. Intelligent infinity became aware. Infinity became aware. So infinity is everything. Okay. So there's no separateness yet. This is all happening to itself. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's clear. Thanks. It's self-reacting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. When you were talking about the holographic part of it, Jackie said, hence the fractal universe. Is that where
Yes,
that
and we'll get to
comes
that.
from?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Holographic or fractal concept of us being a complete, perfect copy of the original consciousness. In fact, we're not. We're not necessarily a copy, but that's a metaphor that works. Rupert goes into it from another perspective, in that we are it manifest, like you are the person that when you have a dream last night, and in that dream you were a person called Mary walking down the streets of France. Mary is, in all intents and purposes, you walking down the streets of France, right? Because you're the one dreaming Mary in France. France is also you. The whole concept and atmosphere in the dream is all you. It's all happening in your mind. In a sense, that's how we are. Intelligent infinity's mind, or its consciousness, its awareness, is dreaming us. And what Rupert says is, for intelligent infinity to know finiteness, and we'll get to finiteness in just a minute. It has to limit itself through the perception of a finite being. Infinity can only know infinity. It can't know what a finite, limited thing without limiting itself to know it. And the way it limits itself is through our five senses. It experiences itself, the creation that it makes, the holographic creation, through the limits of our five senses, plus our thinking, feeling, right? Perceiving, thinking, and feeling. Thinking is where the dimension of time comes in, as Rupert would explain it. So yeah, it's another way of looking at it. Again, these are metaphors about things, but we're not really talking about a thing. We're talking about, it's just like when Rupert asks you to go and say, "Are you aware?" and you go, "Yes," because you think about, yeah, I'm aware. And you think about he says, describe to me what that is aware. And what a lot of people want to do is describe their mind, but he won't let them, because aware is not a thought. It's that which notices the thought. Aware is not a thing. It's that which notices the thing or knows the thing. To describe that which knows it, and when you think about how do you describe that, there aren't words to describe it. It's very difficult to describe any aspect of it, because it's beyond the mind. It is your true essence, and that's what we're talking about here. You're now connecting back to the dreamer, if you like, to infinite awareness, to the one infinite awareness. We are all just kind of like I don't know, we're walking around like a window that it can experience itself through, a limited window, if you like, that can experience itself through. Everything exists in it in potential. To experience it directly, it has to limit itself through us to have that experience, or any conscious entity, including animals, plants, any conscious thing. And then later on, it'll say also that that level of awareness exists in everything, because it's all from this one aware being. This is what the law of one really means. We are all in one dream, in a sense. And again, that doesn't really do it justice, but that's the best metaphor that I've heard that kind of helps us relate to how does that work.
All right, thanks, Scott. Andrew.
Evening, Scott. I think I've got a much more down to earth basic question. It's really hard to understand. I've been focused on what you were just saying. The sentence, thus many dimensions, infinite number are possible. Does that imply that multi-universes are possible?
Yes.
And we had the movie Sliding Doors. Or is there another universe where I didn't ask my question this evening, which is just split off from this universe? Or is that not really addressed in the Law of One? That's
Well, you're talking about alternate timelines and
Yeah.
things. It's certainly the door is open that is the reality. Yeah, there are many other dimensions. There are many other possible um, versions of you having this experience. So the multi-universe theory is not confirmed or negated by the Law of One, because they don't address that. I don't think they had that concept in the 80s. If they
Yeah.
would have, Don would have asked it because he was a physicist. But they talk around it enough that I would, in confidence, can say that the Law of One would say yes. That's like very much likely how it is. Yeah, many dimensions, infinite in number, are possible. In other words, any kind of alternate possibility is played out.
So we can find out what sort of universe would be created when I didn't ask this question, because that's exploring another path of learning.
Yeah, you can ponder and consider that. Finding it out might be a bit more challenging. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right.
So, yeah,
go
we're
ahead.
good. No, we're good.
Okay. So let's look at the concept of infinity led to manyness. So here's where we get, because right now we haven't even got to any type of division. It was just sort of like a big aware mist that started to create movements and started to explore what does that mean. And there was energy that was created that became love, that was an attracted motion, or that started to bring about that motion. So then Don says, then can you tell me how the galaxy and this planetary system were formed? And Ra says, you must imagine a great leap of thought in this query. And I cut a little bit out of this later on, because Don jumps ahead and then regrets that he did and tries to go back. But Ra bridges the gap here anyway, so it's just worth going with the flow of it. So he says, you must imagine, that's what he means by a great leap of thought in this query, because he goes from nothing is formed to how do they form the planets in the galaxy. And apparently Ra was thinking there's a few more steps before that happened. But he goes on, for at that last query, the physical, as you call it, universe was not yet formed or born. So that's what he's meaning there. The energies moved in increasingly intelligent patterns, okay, until the individualization of various energies emanating from the creative principle of intelligent infinity became such as to be co-creators. And essentially, suns become specifically that because they end up being called logos, okay? And our sun is a sub-logos of the main sun of this galaxy, Milky Way galaxy. But they're not the only co-creators. I think there's many beings of different levels in the octaves that are part of this co-creation. But what happened is intelligent patterns until the individualization. So here's where it started to become individualization of various energies emanating from the first principle of intelligent infinity, which was free will, became co-creators. And it goes on. So the so-called physical matter began. The concept of light is instrumental in grasping the great leap of thought, as this vibrational distortion of infinity is the building block of that which is known as matter. The light being intelligent and full of energy. So matter is built from light, is what Ra is saying here. Very powerful, very deep. The light being intelligent, in other words, the light has intelligence and full of energy, thus being the first distortion of intelligent infinity, which was called by the creative principle. This light of love was made to have in its occurrences of being certain characteristics. So as it occurred, it started to have certain characteristics emerge. Among them, the infinite whole paradoxically described by the straight line, as you would call it. So one of the characteristics of light was it would penetrate or go out in a straight kind of vortex line. This paradox is responsible for the shape of various physical illusions, entities you call solar systems, galaxies, and planets, all revolving and tending towards the lenticular, like a lens shape. Okay, so that's a characteristic of light. What the way it's manifest is a part of the nature of the intelligence of light. Darwin goes on, could you tell me the next step that occurred after that step? The steps, as you call them, are at this point of question simultaneous and infinite. So everything started to kind of once the solar systems and galaxies were starting to form, things started to kind of multiply exponentially from there. Is kind of what he's saying there. Don says, could you tell me how intelligent infinity became, shall we say, very difficult with some of the language, how intelligent infinity became individualized from itself? This is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept. So here's this one intelligent mass of infinity. It's not stuff. It's just kind of energy, right? It's not like physical matter as we think it is. It's energy. More probably the easiest way to describe it. And it's discerned a concept. It had a epiphany in a sense. This concept was discerned due to the freedom of will of awareness. So it became aware, and in aware, it had choices of what if kind of concepts. If you can consider it thought at that level, that's probably the closest thing to it. And so, due to freedom of will of awareness, the concept which it discerned was finity. Finity means limited, right? Infinite means limitless, not limited. Finite or finity means limited. Okay, this was the first and primal paradox or distortion of law one. So why is it a primal paradox? Because there's one thing thinking about, hey, if I limit it myself many times, there'll be manyness, and that's what he says this. Thus, the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. So there's the evolution of that creative concept. It's oneness and unified. It creates motion as it becomes aware. It has free will, so it's able to think of whatever it wants. It allows that it experiences free will. It starts to think, what would it be like if I was limited or finite and there was many of me? And hence we came into existence as a result of that notion. So discerned the freedom of will of awareness. The concept was finity. One intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity, there are no ending to manyness. The exploration, thus, is free to continue infinitely in an eternal present. He chooses his words very, very powerfully. An eternal present is like what Eckhart talks about, the power of now. There is only present. Time is part of the illusion of our holographic experience, but it's hard for us to conceive of that. So the eternal present, in the flow of the eternal now, the free will is it continues to able to invest in manyness infinitely. So hence the creation of the whole of what we see out there. When you look out at the stars at night. And the whole of what we see inside, when you look in the smallest and smallest of the atoms, is an infinity in both directions of the greatness and the smallness of it. The whole of that order of things is an experience or experiment in manyness, exploration of manyness. Manyness by separating itself into the finite mind or the finite beingness, limited beings. We are, or we think we are. We're actually not. We're a limited being, like Mary is in the dream that Martha has about being Mary in France, walking down the streets of France or Paris, right? Mary is limited within Martha's dream of her, because Martha is thinking that I'm Mary and I'm in France and I'm walking down the street of Paris, having whatever experience happens. All that's happening in Martha's mind. But Mary is the limited being created by the mind of Martha who's dreaming her. We, in that sense, are that limited finite experiencing in the holograph of the dream, if you'd like, reality, what we think is reality, what we consider reality, what Ra would consider a holographic illusion. Mind-blowing stuff. So take your time to digest it, because this is exploring what Ra would explain as what the hell is our reality all about? What's going on here? What are we experiencing here? And this is how the intent of the creator is giving you an insight into the creation, but also into the creator, whom you are an aspect of. Questions about this one?
Yes, Jackie.
That was really helpful. I'll just put my video on. I think I've just understood for the very first time why everything stems from geometry. Because if suddenly you're creating finiteness out of infinity, that can have any shape. Like it could be a circle, a square, it could have 7 sides, 16 sides, or whatever. And when that's three-dimensional, it becomes three-dimensional. Am I on the right track there, Scott?
Yes, that's a great way to look at it. Sacred geometry tends to have a great way of sort of teasing apart how the swirling energies form what we perceive as matter, and there's a consistency to the patterns, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence the what is it, octagon or hexagon on Saturn, on the North Pole of Saturn, right? Manifesting that shape.
Yeah, awesome. Judy.
Yes, it's just a practical thing that may help us imagine what we imagine as being real. If I look at the house, and we see it as a house with walls, and it's really just swirling energy. And we have no way of knowing that it isn't actually real. But when we see hundreds of orbs moving through the wall and moving through the trees and moving through the ground into the earth, they don't even see it. It doesn't exist for them because they're in such a high frequency. But we see it as something solid that we can't walk through. And yet all these hundreds of orbs are all flowing through it, because to them it is a totally different reality. It's just energy. Because that's what happens here. At this place, we can see that happening. Yes.
Yeah, different phase dimensional beings. And I think there's, we talk about dimension, we call it 5D, 5-dimension. There's many aspects to that, and Ra's certainly confirming there's an infinite possibilities of dimensional things and life and experience or awareness of some kind at all sorts of levels. We're just locked into our own octave here with the 7 main densities, like the 7 notes, right? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or the 7 colors from red through to purple in a rainbow, are representative of those changes in frequency. And he's certainly talking about vibration. Vibration is a frequency of motion. So changing of vibration changes frequency, changes perception. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Explanation of matter being formed out of light, what we perceive as light being intelligent and full of energy, right? Infinite vibration, distortion of infinity is the building block of that which we know as matter. The great leap there of light as an instrument of what we know as matter, or instrumental. Light is instrumental in grasping the great leap through the vibrational distortion. So everything is vibrating. And these talk about the hermeneutic principles. The first hermeneutic principle is all is mind. The second one is this correspondence as above, so below. But the third one is everything is vibrating. All is in vibration. Everything is in motion. And Ra's absolutely confirming that concept. And that's what created or began what we perceive as the reality of this creation that we are existing in.
Mm.
I love, though, the concept of finity, that this intelligent, infinite mass had a concept of experience as a finite rather than an infinite. Because as an infinite, there's just one, right? You can't have 2 infinite beings, can you? Just think about that. If you had 2 infinite beings, there would be a beginning and an end to each of them, so they wouldn't be infinite. 2 infinite beings would have to be only one being or one thing, one aspect. If anything is infinite, it's all encompassing. Once it's limited, it's finite. That's the definition of what finite means. And so that's where the concept of what is finite like? And that's where manyness came from. Out of one infinite, many finite aspects of it. So many dreams and many dreamed realities, in a sense. Much more deep than sort of our concept of dreaming, but that's the best kind of connection that we can make, I think. And both Rupert and Eckhart use that as a metaphor of understanding this reality from another point of view, rather than it being a reality where we are fixated on the things in it made of matter. It's a reality that's fundamentally of awareness and consciousness, right? And so we experience this reality through our consciousness, through the lens of our body, through our 5 senses, don't we? Every experience of this reality is interpreted through the lens of our body, our finite, limited lens.
All right. I've got a couple of questions in the chat, and one of them is, in essence, we are presently the dreamer who became the dream, when in reality we have many dreams, hence many realities.
Yeah, I don't think the one intelligent infinity, the one aware that we are an aspect of, is limited in any way of that. So, and that he keeps saying that there's an infinite, it can go on in an infinite manner, and he says that exploration and manyness, infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity. So yes, it's another way of explaining that. Yeah.
So there's likely to be many universes that are completely different to ours in its structure or its expression of that creation, which would be
yes. Although there's this caveat, and Lord One kind of makes this clear, there's some consistency. Excuse me. There's consistency or uniformity because it's one intelligent infinity, and it learns from its own experimentation what works and what doesn't work. So it doesn't stay with a creation that's not working as far as what laws and that are set up to enable an ongoing experience in there, right? It's not going to keep investing in one that's not working. So what Ra talks about is yeah, I mean, even different, every solar system has its own set of sub kind of natural laws of how that solar system works. So that's just one sun and the planets. But and they get their kind of parameters from the galactic creative force, which is the galactic central sun, in a sense, and they set up their parameters. And what Ra said is our galactic central sun, the one thing that's noteworthy when compared to other galactic creative central suns and how they've set up the rules in theirs, is our one is primarily focused on maximizing the expression of free will. So in other galaxies, just implied by that statement, they have free will, but maybe not quite as openly as out. There's probably much more of a curriculum planned, more rigidity to the parameters they can exercise their free will within. And I don't know what that might look like. Go ahead.
I wonder what defines working when you say if it's not working, if creator is just wanting to experience finiteness, what
yeah well one example of that one example of that was what we talked about last time with the veil. Originally there wasn't a veil for third density, and that's how it was originally set up, but that wasn't working as well as they wanted to. Let's put it that way. They wanted to improve upon that. Remember, everybody was just hanging out in third density, experiencing this finite, tangible, and the pleasures and that of it, knowing that they're connected to the one that's not really trying that hard, not really feeling like any motivation to. And they created the veil, and wow, that quantum leap third density became the shortest one. Before the veil, third density was a long, arduous time because people just were messing around. They were like college students, always at the beach, not going to class. So they never graduated, and that was a problem. So there's an example maybe of, well, it wasn't working quite as they wanted, so they tried something new. What the Law of One says is that as soon as they tried that and saw the benefit of it, every galaxy said, hell, we'll do that too, or at least had the option to, but it became kind of a uniform thing. So instantly it was the one mind knew, hey, here's a better way of setting it up. So they're learning through trial and error and experience. It's like an experimental process of, let's try this, that's working better than that was, so let's do that more often, etc. Does that make sense?
So yeah, it does make sense, but I'm trying to get to that. In order for it to not work, there must have been an overriding goal in it all, rather than just experiencing. There must have been a goal to determine it's either a working or it's not working.
Yes, it's a very good insight. And so the question was, what would be intuitively, what is that goal?
Right.
Yeah. And the Law of One brushes on that. Essentially, it is the evolution towards light. It is an evolution upwards in the spiraling upward climb towards greater and greater light. It's also, the goal is for intelligent infinity to know itself by experiencing itself as completely as possible in an infinite ongoing kind of process of creating and experiencing. And so but there's an evolutionary process. And in another couple of slides we're going to talk a little bit about again the light and how the densities start to progress, where in the densities are designed for us to kind of achieve greater and greater awareness of and interaction with light. And what that means is more than just illumination. In fact, light being illumination is its least valuable characteristic in the infinite universe.
Right.
That's
So,
just
well,
it's kind of a
while you
byproduct. Yeah.
while you're talking about light, there's a question. What is meant by "let there be light" in the Old Testament? How do you define light? Is the light the same as awareness?
Yes. That's what I would have said is let there be awareness. Um, the Kabbalah in the writings on the trestle board, through the seraphs that climb the ladder back, that map the path of humanity back to infinity, define the creator, Ein Sof, the creator, which is Ein Sof is the term for this mass intelligence of energy, this mass awareness that we're all being created in and from and are, and it's infinite, boundless or limitless, formless. Light is the word. Is the Hebrew word, but it also means consciousness, awareness, enlightenment. All of those are kind of synonyms of how they use the word in that concept. So when we say light in English, we often think of the flashlight or the light on the ceiling that lights up the room, and that is true. The sun does light up the sky, but there's much, much, much more involved in that. So the light of awareness is probably the deeper way of understanding. Let there be light. Let there be awareness. Let there be individualized awareness that chooses to progress, right? That has the option to choose how it would progress and live and experience.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Lou?
Yes, thanks, Lee. Scott, as you were explaining this, it came to me the vision of the Mandelbrot effect. And could that be an explanation or visualization of what we're talking about? From the infinity to finity. This expansion, this expanding and it's repeating.
Remind me again of what you mean by the Mandelbrot effect.
If you see a video of the Mandelbrot effect, and you have shown us some of those, they are in
the fractals.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that is infinity reflecting itself through a finite expression of itself, and having experience as that finite expression, but it's always connected to the one. We're not separate selves, and in fact, that's the great myth, or the great discovery of this illusion in third density is that we're not separate. We are one connected, intelligent being having separate experiences, but we're not. At the other densities, they are aware at whatever level you want to give them awareness of, but they are aware of their connectedness. It's the veil, which was a recent addition, relatively, I mean, a million billions of years probably, but a recent addition to third density was the veil. That's what makes us truly think that we're separate. And that's what motivates us so much to learn and grow and strive. So that gave us the option for this great schooling experience to take us away from the comfort of knowing I'm part of the one infinite creator. I'm just going to enjoy that, which is kind of like the attitude that most had until the veil came. And then everybody's like, hey, what the hell's going on, right? And you've got to work it out all your life. You're like trying to figure out how does this work, this life, and is it fair? Is it not fair? How do I work out what my point is and purpose is and what's really going on? And in that darkness creates a desire to want to know and to aspire to come to know the creator, which interestingly we think is outside of ourselves, only to get to a point of enlightenment where we realize it's in the journey to the creator is within. And that's where that connection is, through the veil of the conscious and subconscious mind. Learn to listen to that deeper part of yourself and learn to get past the controls of the thinking mind, the problem solving tool that we were given, to the essence of I am, to the essence of being and fully present in the moment, and open that gateway, which is all of the religious literature is about that. In a sense, if you were to boil it down to a nutshell, it's all about that journey of discovery, breaking through the veil and understanding we are connected, and there's purpose and point in this experience. So yeah, the fractal piece of it is just that's happening multiple times at once. When we dream, we tend to dream as one person and experience the dream as an entity within the dream. Notice that you don't dream from the God perspective, where you're watching yourself doing something and watching yourself from a third. You experience yourself as in a body doing that as that person, don't you? The dream. And that's how infinity experiences itself through us, in our body, doing what you're doing right now, listening to this on Zoom call at this present time, right? So you don't dream like you're watching it from outside, from a God perspective or a third person perspective and seeing yourself doing things. You are in your body and experiencing the reality of the dream through your own senses in the dream.
Brilliant. Thank
That's
you.
metaphor for what we're doing in this situation. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
And a comment from Jackie. How's this? Finity can be any shape, hence matter started with geometry. And because all is vibration, matter vibrating at different rates created different substances, densities, and dimensions. And talk created infinite distortions in a fractal manner.
Yeah. It's interesting. Science tends to think that entropy comes in and order turns to disorder. And in some sense, one way of looking at it does. But what's interesting, I think, is there's not such randomness where everything is happening at once, because that quickly just distills down into what's working. And I think like vibrate, when you vibrate or you put sand on a plate and vibrate it and change the vibration, the notes that you're vibrating or the sound you're vibrating, it creates different forms and shapes. So vibration creates geometry. And what we find is there's certain geometries or vibrations that work well in fitting together. And there you go, that creates matter, doesn't it? Those shapes fit together and bond together and create what appears to be matter. And that's a way that to understand that matter is light energized at certain vibrations to attract through the force of love, through intelligent infinity, attracts them into a bonding kind of situation that what we perceive as matter. I think it's wonderful to look at it from the point of view of how beautiful and majestic it is. It's certainly intelligent. It's not just random shit happening and some of it works and some of it doesn't. It's learning and acquiring greater depth or ability, skill as we go through this process and have done through the eternities.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
All good.
All right, inspiring energies. So here we go with, again, the motion here, and talks a little bit more about the nature of light. So Don asks, was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the individualized infinite intelligence? And so says the galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it in turn found its focus and became co-creator. So imagine that as like the central sun sort of become more and more aware, and then it became like, I'm going to create more like me, but sub-suns. And then they got awareness and said, I'm going to create planets and life on those planets, etc., is kind of the concept that sort of evolved like that. So individualized portions means that it's not just one mind governing and controlling every aspect of everything. The one thing that the one mind or the one intelligence did, the one awareness did, was give free choice to those finite, separate aspects of itself that became co-creators with it. There's an overriding governance and awareness of everything, but there's a lot of empowerment into the individualized entities. And so that's kind of what he's saying here. Individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As the exploration began, in turn, it found its focus and became co-creator. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created a universe, and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow. Interesting way to say the rhythms of free choice to flow. So the one infinite creator allowed the rhythms of free choice to flow in the individualized aspects that came out, playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities. Each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. So, wow. So the overseeing initial aspect of intelligent infinity didn't take charge of every little aspect of the whole of the creation in a sense that they micromanaged it. They gave free choice and empowered the sub-logos or the logos that came out, which were the great sons, the sons of God, as creators and co-creators. And so it gave them some parameters, but within that, they could make a lot of their own choices as to the natural laws of any particular universe. Each universe, in turn, individualized to a focus, becoming in turn co-creators and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regulating or causing natural laws to appear in the vibratory patterns, of which you would call a solar system. So again, our sun is considered a sub-logos, sub to the logos that's the sun at the center of the Milky Way, right? We are considered sub-logos. We are the sons of the sun, or the sons and daughters, the creative expressions of the energies of our sun. So each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinated system of illusionary natural laws. Interesting. Each one has its own local coordinated system of how the illusion of reality plays out, what we would call natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small an atom, of any density or illusionary pattern contains, as in a holographic picture, the one creator, which is infinity. So again, there's the fractal thing that Lou was referring to. He refers to it back then. Any portion, no matter how small, contains, as in a holographic picture, the one creator in its infinity. Thus, all begins and ends in mystery, and hence that's how does that work? You know, that's the discovering of knowing itself. How the, shall we say, planet, this is Don asking, planetary system that we are in now evolve, was it all created at once, or was the first sun created and thus and this was created, this meaning like the planets? The process is from the larger in your illusion to the smaller. So he's saying sun was created, planets came after that, and then so on. Thus, the co-creator individualized the galaxy, created energy patterns which then focused in multitudinous focuses of further consciousness awareness of intelligent infinity. And that, so created the galaxy and then created a whole bunch of sub-suns and planets and billions of them just in our Milky Way. Thus, the solar system of which you experience inhabitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws, which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy. So the galaxy is the dominant creative overseer. The sun is the solar system overseer creator, right? The sun, solar spiraling energy, refers to the galactic spiraling energy. So each sort of delegates and empowers the one within parameters that it sets up. So what I'm understanding is the Milky Way, if it's an intelligent, think of it as an intelligent being, said, this is how we're going to run things in this galaxy, in this creation, see how it works. Here's how we're going to set it up, the natural laws. And then it creates a bunch of suns and then goes, you guys can go off and within those parameters, create how you want it to work for your local area, in your neighborhood, if you like. How do you want your neighborhood to work? And that's our sun made those decisions for how things work on this earth and probably how they had worked on Mars, Maldek, and Ra's original planet, which was not Mercury, the other one. Forgot the name of it. The second planet. What's the name of the second planet? Venus, right? Yeah, Venus. Talking to myself here. Okay, so the sun sets up those kind of parameters. And one of the things that the Lord once said is our sun particularly set up a very high level expectation for honoring free choice and enabling it to be maximized, which is one of the challenges we have, why there's so much bad things that people are choosing and allowed to play out as a consequence of the sun setting up that as one of the main parameters. Okay, so where do we get to? So larger from smaller, the solar system of which you experience and have its own patterns with them, so-called natural laws, which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy to the planetary spiraling energy, to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy, which began the first density of awareness or consciousness of planetary entities. So he's starting to go in and we're going to explore then the densities, because that's what started to happen is and we'll see in the next slide where he starts talking about the levels or densities of awareness. Questions about that one? Kind of a muddled up bag there, but essentially it's the story of this, the delegative free choice given from the infinite creator to the galactic creator to the solar system creator.
Right. So the infinite creator sent off parts of itself to create in their own way.
Yes.
Which is interesting. I wonder what the shadow self of the creator universe looks like.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of mysteries involved in there, but because they gave them a lot of, I think it wanted to say, well, let's see what happens, right? And we'll try things. And so there's likely have been, and certainly we know through the Orion group, there is a path that was allowed to play out of enslavement and dominance and not honoring free will, but force, a forceful part. That may be a dominant feature in some other galactic creations. And so that evolution in that galaxy would be on a path that would be more likely aligned with how the Orion group was trying to do their piece, because they said there's only about 10% in our galaxy that go on to the negative path. I think it was 10%. So it's a smaller. There's a lot more. The main path is, and the more likely path is that people choose to align with service to others rather than service to self.
All right. There's no questions. Yeah.
Okay. So then it goes into the densities, and we talk about the 4 elements. So could you tell me about the first density of planetary entities? And Ra says each step recapitulates intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you would call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus or of self-awareness. So awareness, yeah, interesting. Thus the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness. Interesting. Light comes to form the darkness according to the co-creator's pattern and vibratory rhythms. So constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness. So first density is where consciousness becomes enabled, if you like. The mineral and water life upon the planet, learning from fire and wind, the awareness of being. This is the first density. Isn't that interesting? So minerals, earth, and water learn from fire and wind, awareness of being. Just let that blow your mind for a little while. That's what first density is about. Well, first of all, it's saying that everything, water, air, fire, and earth, are all aware. But fire and wind seem to become aware of being first and teach it to water and earth by the logic in this expression here. Does the first density then progress to a greater awareness? The spiraling energy, which is the characteristics of what you call light, moves in straight line spiral. So here it is here. Light spirals, but in a straight line, which seems to be an oxymoron, but if you think about it, kind of like the DNA strand spirals around itself, but it's a straight strand, right? So instead of just going straight, it spins while it goes straight, it spirals while it goes straight. So light moves in a straight line. Spiral thus gives spirals an inevitable vector upward to move to more comprehensive beingness. So there is the drawing upward. The spiraling energy, which is the characteristic of what you would call light. So that's part of the nature of what light is. Moves in a straight line. Spiral thus it moves in a straight line spiral. Sorry, I'll say it that way. It moves in a straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness. So it goes upwards to a more comprehensive, a more aware, a greater level of beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Thus, first dimensional beingness strives towards the second density. Lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution to random change. Instead of just fire, the 4 elements like earth, water, fire, and air, just sort of being there and then dissolving into random change or whatever, it ends up wanting to go on to second density, where it's a density that's about growth. First density is the density of awareness. Second density is the density of growth. And so it's the nature of light to vector upwards. That's what draws us wanting to go to higher levels of beingness, more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. Coming back to a more unified alignment with the great creator, the beginning creator. As that creator becomes more and more enriched by the experience of its finite fractals, of its limited selves, if you like, that are just out there experiencing itself. Because what are we experiencing? We're experiencing the creation. The creation is the isness of things, and our self is our beingness or amness. So I am, the chair is, the isness of the chair is the divinity in the chair. The amness of myself, of yourself, is the divinity in you. Does that make sense? There's a lot here, but essentially the lesson from this one is the nature of light draws each awareness or each aspect of awareness to higher and higher levels of vibratory light or awareness, which goes from one density to another. That's how the four elements in their levels of awareness learn from each other and then aspire to go to second density, which is plant and animal life.
Right. So that was pretty much set up in the co-creators, the way that the co-creator set up this particular universe.
Yeah. The building blocks. Yeah. It's like levels of schooling or education, if you like. It starts with just becoming aware and learning that from each other. Fire and wind teach earth and water. And then once they get to a fullness of that level, they aspire to go to growth, which is animal life and plant life. And then from there, it'll go on. Yeah. So it's a beautiful kind of idea of looking at how each builds upon what it gained from the previous density.
Awesome.
Okay. So let's look at this one. Second density. Could you define what you mean by growth? So again, these are if you look at the numbers, we're pretty much following along the whole of section 13. Right, it says, picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings, which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards light and growth. So by striving towards light, what do you mean? A very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light is that of the leaf or flower in this instance, striving towards the source of light, right? The flowers turn and follow the sun through the day, don't they? Plants grow towards the light. If you put a plant in a room and there's only a light coming through one side of the room through a window, you'll notice the plant grows towards that. Everybody's seen that and had that experience, so that's what he's saying here. Don says, is there any physical difference between first and second density? For instance, if I could see the second density planet and a first density planet side by side, in my present condition, could I see both of them? Would they be both visible? That's correct. Interesting comment here, all of the octaves of your densities would be clearly visible, with the exception, were it not the fourth through seventh freely choosing not to be visible. Interesting, isn't that? So fourth and beyond choose to cloak themselves from us. Why would they do that, do you think? Think about that. Don't have to. It's just quite there. They freely choosing not to be visible. So all of them would be visible normally to us, but the fourth through seventh choose not to be. So we don't see them when we look out. When we look out into the universe, we don't see those. Maybe that's what dark matter is. That's what we call it. Matter in the universe, they know is there from mathematics, but they can't find it. Interesting thought, isn't it? Fourth through seventh density freely choose not to be visible to us. Questions about that?
No.
Okay. So again, we're talking about growth, striving towards light. From first density awareness, second density growth. So now we'll go to third density. Then how does the second density progress to the third? The second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness, the individualized self, right? Which is what we're playing with here. That's where the perception of separate self comes from. And that's where the perception of relationships and learning how to get along and all the dynamics of human life come into that. So second density strives towards third density, which is the density of self-consciousness, self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complex. He's talking about our pets here. Again, striving takes place through the higher second density forms, animals primarily, usually specific animals that we befriend and take into our lives, dogs, cats, horses, all sorts. People have all sorts of pets. So higher second density forms who are invested, we invest in them by loving them and taking them into our homes, invested by third density beings, that's us, with an identity. We give them names, we treat them like people, don't we? To the extent that they become self-aware, so they in their animal life gain at a moment an insight into they're a self entity, mind body complex. That's the graduation ticket right there. Thus becoming mind body spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirit. So we help second density beings evolve to third density by how we involve them and treat them. Pets in some ways, but at any time when humans interact with them, sometimes we're using them as beasts of burden. Elephants, cows, horses, a long time's been used as beasts of burden to do work for us. But often we treat them and invest a lot of care and love towards them. Some people more than others, but usually that's what we intend to do. That's part of how we can invest in bringing them along this spectrum of going from second to third density. So the question there is, back in time, we all had the experience of being both first and second density. We've been rocks and water and air and fire, some of us more fiery than others. Then we've been animals, probably many, many different versions of it. Plants, animals. Some people are more animalistic now than others. And now we've invested and climbed that ladder out into individual self-consciousness or self-awareness and experiencing third density is humans. What is the density level of our planet, Earth, at this time? So, interesting question. So he jumps to, oh, yeah, okay. So if that happens like that with the life on the planet, what about the planet itself? The sphere upon which you dwell is third density in its beingness of mind, body, spirit complexes. It is now in a space-time continuum, fourth density. This is causing somewhat difficult harvest. So it's both at the moment. It seems like in the in space-time, which is our awareness level, it's still locked into third to a point. In time-space, which is where you go when you die, it's still on Earth, but it's the other sort of dimensional shift into what they call space-time. It's in fourth density there. And that's because we're in transition at this time in the Earth's evolutionary history. Again, that's why it is such dynamic change with the energies in the Earth. That's the Earth is giving birth to itself into fourth density, and it's a struggling thing, mostly because of the complexes, mind, body, spirit complexes upon the Earth being so still stubbornly locked into third density thinking. Now, we're evolving into fourth density, and we see that these groups are part of that, but there's still a lot of sort of anchors down into third density by a lot of third density kind of behavior and thought and feelings involved in the people. So the people are what's holding that transition back at this point. So how does third density planet become a fourth density planet? The fourth density is, as we have said, regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. Now it's interesting though, because the clock can strike each hour, and they know when it's going to strike because the hour's coming up, but it doesn't mean that the next time it strikes is when it transitions. It just means that there's a point when it will transition. And for us, it seems to be aligned with solar activity, because the solar cycle, I think it's a 7 or 10-year cycle, I think it's something like that, where we go from solar maximum to solar minimum. So there's definitely a linkage up there as to it. I think that's what they mean there. So it doesn't mean that it's a set time, because we've already heard that they've actually put us on an alternate timeline to give us a little more time. So they will go through a few strikings of the clock that maybe we could have graduated, but they're holding it off to the graduation clock or graduation strike. Is kind of how I read what that means. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibratory configuration. And that's another way of sort of looking at that alternate timeline. But also the fact that the whole of our solar system is moving into a denser area of space. There's a high vibratory cloud that we're moving into that's causing this transition on all of the planets. You look up the planetary weather history of Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, they're all going crazy as far as what's going on the surface of those planets with their changes. Okay, vibratory configuration. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. So that's changing going on. However, the thought forms, of your people during this transition period are such that the mind, body, spirit complexes, the individual people of both individual and societies, are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point the compass in one direction. So there's his caveat that the problem is that we aren't unified as a people yet. We've got to get it together more from a spiritual unity consciousness point of view. And so the difficulties of the Earth transitioning is a manifestation of the fact that the people haven't come into synchronicity yet with their thought patterns and understanding that there's a oneness to humanity, that we're not so separate. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, fourth density is the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding. There's an interesting connection between love and understanding there, is not effective with the present society complex. So we're not at a point where it's maximally effective right now. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. Not on this Earth. The Earth will go to fourth. They will reincarnate into another third density planet somewhere else in the Milky Way, likely. The energies of your wanderers and your teachers and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing that harvest. However, there are few to harvest. So that's their dilemma. And we talked about that last time, why they did the alternative timeline, what is causing some of that problem. And what Quo was saying is things are getting looking a lot better since the 80s when Ra gave this. It's looking quite promising, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Questions about this? Progression from density to density.
No, all good.
I think that's it. That is it. Okay. Way longer than I thought it would. Let's gotta figure out how to get that back.
Can you just click on the first slide? Oh, the second slide, I mean. So a question that I've asked since I was a very little child is, where did that infinity come from?
The original thing that became aware, that became conscious. The best answer that I've heard is it's always being there. It didn't. It just is. It is the beginning of what is created. So the question is, who created that? And there's no answer to that. And maybe that's part of what they mean by the mystery. But it sounds like it was always there. It wasn't always aware. It wasn't always in motion. It was just kind of hanging around like a big, quiet fog, if you like. And then it started to kind of, the movement started to happen. It started to sort of become, at a point, become conscious. How and why is a big, it's the big question. And I think it's a question that it sounds like even Ra, they're saying they're still trying to fathom some of the depths of the mysteries of things like that. But certainly in the higher densities and outside of the veil, once language is gone, we'll have a much better ability to kind of fathom that to a point. But within our limited ability to articulate in words and see in a veiled state here, I don't put out a lot of hope of how of people coming to a way of understanding how that happened, or even what was the impetus for that to happen. And then, it might have been just, again, there was no time, right? Time is again, within this illusion, is part of the creation of our illusion. So there's no sense of measuring what happened to stimulate, but how long did it take, or what, how long is an Earth term. In infinity and eternity, that doesn't really matter. So yeah, the best answer is I don't know, and I don't know anybody that does. All we can do is kind of postulate, theorize, but Ra doesn't certainly even try and address that. It's sort of one of those parts of the mystery. Yeah.
Okay, we've got a comment in the chat and a couple of questions. So, do we need to have an understanding of the principles noted this evening in order to ascend? Alternatively, may one simply embrace the concept that the infinite creator is a mystery and still advance spiritually?
I think to ascend, Ra makes it quite clear that it's about service to others. It's not necessarily to understand all the complexities of the creation. some people's minds are designed to want to inquire about that and go, okay, so for one, then how did this happen? And why do we feel this way and that way? And there are answers for those, but they're not prerequisites. The prerequisite for ascension is clear, to be more than 50% service to others in your choices, to be one of Christ consciousness in your heart, to be a loving expression of wanting to see or help or be of service to others. That's the only requirement for us to ascend. It's not to get wrapped up in the mysteries and the myths of this.
Brilliant.
Hopefully that helped.
So our vibratory rate.
Yeah. Can you exit me from sharing, because for some
Yep.
reason I can't find the button to do that, and I'd much rather look at everybody else than
Oh,
go back to. There you go. Great, thank you.
Ray. Oh, yep. Sorry.
Right. Although I raised hand for another question, but now I have first another question. The last point which you mentioned, Scott. Service to others. What exactly is considered service? What, for example, something, just give me time. Sorry. So service to others in a way, like for instance, what serves their like habitual pattern, what exactly they need, or what exactly is their highest good, but what is, for example, very tiny example, the people who are in a particular cyclic way, and we do something for them because it is helping them on their physical level, but not necessarily it is taking them to the other side, it's not good for them to their highest good, even their physical self. So are we doing service or disservice? So what exactly, I think I'm able to convey my message. What exactly constitutes service to their what sort of self? To their highest good? Then sometime it is better not to serve them. I feel like at times. Like, or feeding, for instance, narcissist people or many such people who are in a particular cyclic way. So what is that service then?
I can many in here could probably weigh in on this, but what I would say is you have to determine that yourself. It's your best judgment. And I think if your heart is open and pure, if your heart honestly wants to do what's best in this situation, I think that's probably the best answer. So it's a perceptual thing, because you've got to perceive what do you think is the best thing to do here. And sometimes we do what we think is best and it turns out to backfire, doesn't it? But you were honestly wanting to be of service to another person and help them. And so to me, that's still of service to others. It's the switch in the heart or in the soul for what is it that motivates you? Are you looking for what you gain from this? Or are you truly wanting to see what's best for the others involved in this? And you are also one of the others involved in this. So it doesn't mean you have to be always self-sacrificing or self-deprecating in your choices. It's looking at the greater good, I think, and every situation is unique. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah,
And
I agree. It's about that. What's your motive for helping?
Yeah.
Is it for you to make you feel better, for you to appease a unrepressed emotion? Is it based on that heart feeling of being inspired to help totally unconditionally?
here, isn't it the sometimes their free will also comes in between? For example, tiny, very minute example. You know that you're giving, like, let's say, medication to someone, and you know yourself with your level of awareness, and that medically also, scientifically also, it is not doing good to them. Rather, it is creating some more issues to them. But they are just blindly following because they said, because third person said, doctor said, and this, and you are just giving for the sake of they are asking, or you have to give them. But you know very well that it's something really not good.
Yeah, I would say tell them the truth as you see it and let them choose for themselves. But once you've told them, you support them in the choice they make, right? The parents will often have children that will make choices that they wish they hadn't have made. Well, you don't cut the kid off usually. You're going to support them anyway. They're still your child. You still love them, but they've made a choice that's causing them pain. And so what do? And in love, you help them through that rather than always pointing out, well, you chose this, you dumb little bugger. I told you not to do that, right? You want to say, what's the best thing to do now? If they make that choice, then how do I help them through this now? If they ask me again, I'll tell them my opinion, but they have free will. So yes, there's a balance in there. And I always, I think, from the divine perspective, from Ra's perspective specifically, they honor free will to the point that if you choose to be a martyr and destroy yourself, they will allow that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Then how? Okay, anyhow, that's a really situation to situation and complex. So my original question, it was basically, which past couple of days I was thinking, as we are talking, you have been talking, Scott, about the 25,000 years of a cycle, this cycle of graduation, right? So most of our known masters from different cultures, from different religion or whatever, but the masters and the ascended masters, uh, prophets, etc., they were, as far as, again, although the time you already mentioned that time is it's an illusion. However, they were within the timeline as we know within this 25,000 years, right? So far as we know about the history, right?
yes. Well, our history only goes back for not even the full 25,000 years, does it? It
Yeah,
goes
yeah,
back about 12 at best. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So so that means all these masters, so that means what about the previous cycles we are not aware?
yes. Well, very, very likely. I mean, the same souls could have been reincarnated for the whole 75,000 years over and over again. Most likely have. So we were Atlanteans. We were the Moran, whatever other existences and cultures in that existed in the 50,000 years before this last cycle. We were likely part of those as well. Many of us have probably been here many times just because we don't have a historical record of it. And then that was part of the Orion's group efforts when they apparently burned the library at what was that great library in Constantine's library, or what was that library? I'm forgetting the name of it. That had all of the great literature from ancient history that was burned in the Middle East.
Alexandria?
Library of
Yeah.
Alexandria.
That's it. Yeah. Thank you. Apparently there was a lot of information about antediluvian great civilizations back then, but they wanted to create the myth that we came out of the caves about 12,000 years ago, and that our evolution has been linear since then, which is just absolutely crap. And there's so much archaeological evidence that does not support that now. So it's hard for them to hold on to that myth, but that's the story we've been told. I think the great masters would have been alive in those times too, and iteratively reincarnated many times. And many of them are probably reincarnated now as wanderers. They would come here now as the great opportunity to try and up the vibratory ante of the whole consciousness here to enable the birthing process to go.
Correct.
push it over the tipping point.
Yes.
Some
Yeah.
might be serving in other capacities beyond the veil. All of them would have certainly an investment. There's
Yeah.
a lot of attention on us right now because just like a mother giving birth and it's a difficult birth, the hospital goes on alert. There's a lot of effort and attention to help her do it. Well, that's how our planet is in the galaxy right now. Is there's a lot of attention on us to try and help this work out. Yeah.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Cherry.
Yes, Scott, going way back to the first density, you've got your earth, wind, fire, and water. The elements, who organised the elements? And is fire actually, we think of fire, lighting a match and making a fire. Would fire be something like lightning
Yeah.
to create the energy, to
Yeah.
mess around with the elements to form water, or well, it helps to form the earth as well.
In the infinite intelligence or intelligent infinity, the one creator fractaled itself into any number of ways of manifesting intelligence. The four elements was one of those manifestations. And so it gave them agency to express and experience being a mineral or being water, being fire. And fire is an entity, an intelligent. In fact, most firefighters will tell you that fire just seems to have some kind of intelligence sometimes, does things completely unexpected, makes choices in the way that it burns and does things. It's quite a difficult beast sometimes to tame.
Depending on the oxygen available at the time.
Yeah, well, there could be lots of factors involved. Yeah, I think we could look at it like most people don't look at matter as having any intelligence, but the law of one says that all is aware in a sense, because all is made of light, right? It's all a vibratory expression of light, and Ra even talks later that it's hierarchical. In other words, the lower densities tend to have respect for the higher density awareness or intelligences. And that's why people like the masters and that are able to do things that look like they're controlling the elements in one sense. Jesus walking on water, commanding the storm to stop, raising someone from the dead, manifesting those kind of things. These are common fourth density attributes. Everybody in fourth density will be able to do those as pretty much common things, just like everybody in third density can usually walk and run unless you're injured, right? So those aren't magical abilities in fourth density. Those are common, normal attributes. Jesus just was able to do it while the rest of us are in third density, so it looks like he's a superhero. And not the only one. There's many Buddhist monks and that were able to ascend to a level where they could interact with the environment in magical ways, putting their hand into solid rock and leaving a handprint. Is a common one that's throughout the Far East, that there's examples of that. So the intelligence that's in the minerals respects those that have ascended to a certain level where if they ask for its cooperation, they cooperate. It's not like they command them. It's more of like they work with them. Is the sense that seems to come from that. But I don't know if I answered your question.
So which of the four elements would you think would be first? Would it be the lightning or
I don't know,
because
that there needs to
something
be
has to
first.
activate the hydrogen and oxygen to create water.
Yeah.
So you've got to get a reaction.
I think it's interesting that Ra talks about how earth and water learned awareness from fire and air. Fire and air are a lot more free, expressive kind of elements, if you like, than earth is, right? Earth seems to be quite, it just sort of sits around. Although the Earth does move itself, but if you've got a rock, you can pretty much count on it'll stay where you leave it for the most part.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's pretty inert. Whereas fire won't, water won't, air won't. They have a lot more fluidity to them. So I mean, it's real hard to get into the mind of understanding what it is they're learning from each other. What is first and second? That could be debatable. I don't know that that's known or even helpful to know that. It's just kind of interesting to theorize, I guess, is what I'm hearing you say.
Because it must have come from somewhere, you know, to be part
Yeah,
of
it's a
the.
manifestation of the infinite creator, as we
Okay.
all are. It's
Righto.
yeah. And in one sense, they don't even actually exist. Just like when you're having a dream tonight and you dream you're sitting on a chair on the streets of Paris. When you wake up, what happened to the chair?
Mm,
Who
yeah.
took the
It's in your
chair?
thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in your dream.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, so that's another way of understanding it. Yeah.
And if it was the sun that was the co-creator for this reality, then that would make sense with regard to the fire anyway,
Yeah.
as
Yes.
a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Would too.
Warmth, fire, warmth tends to have a significant impact on vibration, doesn't it?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, there's a real strong relationship there. And somebody that's a physicist could probably talk quite well on those kind of interactions between the elements, better than I, anyway. Yeah.
Thanks, Cherry. Ray.
It's not a question, it's just something it just popped in. As you know, like in a Hindu religion, which they consider it's 5,000, more than 5,000 years old, and all these Vedas, Upanishads, and all this, where it is all chakras and normal things came. I haven't read that, but this is what I grew up initially in, like my childhood here. So I was thinking, as you're talking about all these fire air elements as being as the, so we were always like told, and this was normal practice, that these were considered as god. They were but specific name, Sanskrit name for even sun is totally considered as a god, sun, god. And there are so many like stories, and maybe Judy can say something more about it. And similarly, like air, they call it like air. Air is like, for instance, I'll just give a name. Deva is a like God, the divine being, positive side. And the Ryan's group, which you are saying, it's like Rakshasa, the negative side. So they call it air god, air Vayu Deva. Vayu means air. Similarly, fire, Agni. That's again Hindi and Sanskrit name. Deva again, Agni Dev. That's Agni god. So they all have, all these elements have been even the water also, and that's how they have been including in any kind of rituals these elements, water, air, even the fire especially, because there are so many type of practices which were regular practices for us for any ceremony or anything, where fire is the most important element. For example, just for the sake of like sharing, for example, marriage, if you have ever any time seen maybe in any place, the marriage is, especially among Hindus, it is the seven circles around the fire, because fire is considered as a witness, as a god. So that's how it just popped in. Okay, so as we are talking about this, so maybe there is some connection in that, or maybe, different culture have their own way of saying these things.
And I think you're right there, Ray. Different cultures do, and different religions have expressed depths of differences of understanding of eternal truths. What Ra is saying is that intelligent infinity is manifest as an intelligent free will entity to whatever degree in first density, which is manifest through the four elements. First density is the density of the four elements becoming aware, learning awareness. Yeah. And however we want to interpret that and however that gets played out in theologies is up for grabs. But the resonant truth is that the one infinite creator is in all of creation.
Yeah.
Manifests it. Yeah.
And also, if you have heard, I don't know, this is also our like a main point for us, that we all are made of these 5 elements. Earth,
Yeah.
sky, and fire is also part of it, and air and spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that means this whole 5 elements become together one divine, the other divine being, another level of creation by all these divine parts. As
Yeah,
a
it's kind of beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
it
beautiful
is.
to think that
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Yeah, just sharing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Judy, you put your hand up a couple of times.
Well, I can't put my hand up because it won't work. Oh, there it does now. Oh, that's interesting. Now I can't remember what I was going to say. I think I was going to talk about what Ray was talking about, that, we're made up of the five elements called doshas. There's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and we're all combinations of those 3 doshas. Some are monodoshic, and some are duodoshic, and some are tridoshic. And fire is one, earth, air, water, and fire, and fire is one of those doshas, one of the elements that make up the doshas, and it's involved in the digestion. So, Sherry, fire helps our digestion. It's the fire element that helps our digestion. Yeah.
Sorry, it's called Vat, which is air. Pit, Kaph. Pit is Agni, fire. Kaph is
Earth.
earth, probably. Yeah, earth. So these 3 words, yes. And
Vata's
basically, all
mainly
the the medical system, the ancient medical system, and even still the people who are practicing the naturopathy or Ayurveda as they call, they still go with these 3 doshas. And anything which anyone is having, so they will relate to these the deficiency or the the adjustments or non-adjustments through these 3 factors. Yeah.
and
The
with
whole
different
Ayurveda
herbs,
is
you can
based on
balance
that.
them all out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a whole science.
Yeah, whole science, that's right.
Mm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just say something? And I don't know, I've just been away doing my meditation for 15 minutes, with the group. So I missed out a bit on what you were talking about, but I can remember you talking about, Scott, I think you were talking about higher densities or dimensions, or higher, helping the lower ones up, drawing them. Was that right? And you were talking about light. And, I think that the light isn't necessarily external, because we're all full of light. And so we're doing the same thing, I think, to plants, because remember I've told you about those osteopermums outside my door, all closed up for the night. And I went out, and it was dark, and I went out and told them how beautiful they were, and they all opened up like that.
Yeah.
So the only thing that could have been would have been light. It must have been. So I must have had enough light in me to open those flowers. So we're all able to do that, all of us. And I think it's really important to know that we have that ability, and we can help people just by being there with our light shining. Yeah.
Exactly. It actually reminds me of another passage in the Law of One where Ra indicates that there are some third density beings that evolved directly from plant life instead of going through animal life. And so their disposition was quite different, because animals tend to have go through a phase where they get tribal and they contend with one another, and animals for just survival. And those who evolved from trees, which are probably the highest level of plant life, I would guess, seemed to be a lot more patiently calm and consistent and grounded, reflecting kind of the disposition of the second density that they evolved from. So all don't need to go through I guess that the other point was all don't need to go through the animal experience to get invested from humans, from third density enough to get identity to evolve. It could happen to plants, and maybe that's what you're doing to your flowers. Certainly, it sounds like you've got a relationship where they're responding to you, and in a way like a pet would. Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you think we carry through some of those things into this experience? When you're talking about even the elements, depending on our connection to them, or
I think there's a residual follow through. I think there is. My instinct says yes, and it seems to be indicated in the Law of One from passages like that one about the entities who evolved from trees didn't go through the animal things, and so I expect so, because there's some apparently there's some like the Ra group, they had a lot more of a benevolent society in third density. There was nowhere near as much contention and stuff, and that's why the pyramids was very helpful to them. Their wanderers gave them the pyramids, and that's why they thought if they gave us the pyramids, it would help us. But it turned out that it backfired a little bit, because we are much more malevolent. We're much more at odds with each other, whereas they weren't. And they don't indicate what they evolved from second density. But that maybe to me as an example was that whole society was much more harmonious. It turns out, actually, from the scheme of things, our society is more closer to the spectrum of disorderly, of unharmonious than most. We're on more towards the end of the spectrum where we're much more contentious, and part of that is because we've inherited a lot of people from Mars and Maldek. Both failed third density and destroyed their planets to a degree. Well, Maldek completely. They are finishing their third density here, so that's been brought. That resonant discord has been brought into our cultural vibratory field, as well as a number of others. I think it's 12 others planets where the people who didn't graduate had to finish or repeat third density, and they had to come here and finish out their third density here as well. That's part of what we talked about last time with the veiling thing, and it's made a little bit more of a difficult scenario for our planet. So yeah, it's followed through, and it's a combination of the inherent vibratory resonance of the souls that go into third density here. It all gets put into the milieu. Yeah, it's like throwing too many ingredients into your cake mix before the fire turns the slop into something edible. Our cake mix has got maybe too much nuts in it. So we'll see how it comes out once the baking's done. But it looks promising more now than it did back in the 80s. All the indications are that we're starting to get alignment and are on the right track. And all I can say is groups like what we are sharing here are a big part of that. This is where the wanderers group together and pull in others who are close to graduation, and they have that like-minded kind of sense of synergy, which really does up the vibratory energy of everybody. And so this is, I mean, and we're not unique, are we? I mean, there's groups like this, probably unknown to each other, likely unknown to each other all over the world. But the fact that we can even get a sense for that through the internet is very heartening and very encouraging to me. Yeah.